Hello and welcome to the Fight Night Picks recap show. I am John Franklin. I'll be your host. It's nice to see you guys. We had a pretty good card, all things being considered. So let's get into it. If I look a little bit under the weather, sleepy to you, my allergies have taken over. There's a lot going on here. What you're dealing with? I don't quite know what's happening with either of these eyes. This one is the one that's problematic. I don't exactly know who to see. Is it a optometrist? Is it an ophthalmologist? An optometrist, by definition, is a person who practices optometry. I think this is what we're looking for right here. What is the difference between an optometrist and an ophthalmologist? And which one is more relevant here? Let's see. An optometrist is not a medical doctor. An ophthalmologist is a medical doctor who specializes in eye and vision care. Why am I struggling with that? Ophthalmologists differ from optometrists in their level of training and what they can diagnose and treat. An optometrist is an eye doctor who's earned the Doctor of Optometry degree, examines eyes for both vision and health problems and corrective refractive errors by prescribing eyeglasses and contact lenses. Some optometrists also provide low vision care and vision therapy. I think I need an ophthalmologist. Now that we have settled that, let's move on to this fight card. All right, let's give it a proper introduction. This event was UFC on ESPN, I believe 10, I versus Calvillo. And originally, this was supposed to take place at Astana Arena in Nur-Sultan, Kazakhstan, and would have been the first the promotion had contested there. Let's talk about these weigh-ins. Let's talk about this missing weight. 3. All right, we had Jessica I, Karl Roberson, and Zarrukh Adashev all miss weight for their respective bouts. I weighed in at 126.25, a quarter pound over the flyweight non-title fight limit. Roberson weighed in at 190.5, 4.5 pounds over the middleweight non-title middleweight limit. And Adashev weighed in at 138.5 pounds, 2.5 pounds over the bantamweight non-title fight limit. Their bouts proceeded at catchweights, and they were fined respectively 25, 30, and 20 for their individual purses. Let's talk a little bit about what this card could have been. I don't like getting too deep into that stuff, but we lost some fights. There were some fights that we were supposed to see. We did not. Most notably, a women's flyweight bout between Melissa Gatto and Mariya Agapova was scheduled for the event. However, Gatto pulled out on June 7th due to visa issues. She was obviously replaced by Hannah Cifers. I'm sure Hannah Cifers, which we'll get to in a minute, is not overly thankful of Ms. Gatto for missing this fight. A bantamweight bout between Tyson and Ryan Benoit was scheduled for the event. However, Benoit withdrew from the event for an unknown reason, and then instead Adashev. And most notably, a bantamweight bout between former UFC flyweight Ray Borg and Merab Dvalishvili was scheduled for the event. However, Borg withdrew for personal reasons and was replaced by promotional newcomer Gustavo Lopez. All right, well, let's talk about the elephant in the room. None of these fights went well for the replacement fighters. So that might have been what was already a foregone conclusion, and the other fighters would have felt the same fate, but we don't know that. So let's get into it. Let's give the main event a proper introduction. Billed as one of the worst main events in UFC history. I guess that's a proper introduction. Although the fight didn't have a lot necessarily on the line, it did contain two women at the top of their games. We'll start with Jessica I, the number one ranked flyweight in the world. She has fought for a world championship and is coming in 4-1 in her last 5. Her opponent, Calvillo, has made her bones at 115, where she has amassed a 9-1-1 record. So let's take a look at what Fight Night Picks thought. So Fight Night Picks was very decidedly in the camp of Cynthia Calvillo. Well, 69-31. That's 70-30. That's pretty much. You guys can do the math. You understand the percentages there. But they thought it was going to be Cynthia Calvillo. Let's see how it turned out. Cynthia Calvillo. Look at those numbers. The official was Cynthia Calvillo defeated number one ranked Jessica I by unanimous decision, 49-46, 49-46, 48-47. Let's talk about the stats real quick, and then we'll get into, as we go through this, let's talk about what mattered about this fight. All right, why was it important? What was the significance of it? Why should fans care? So this fight represented for despite being completely blown out of the water by Valentina Shevchenko, she came in number 1 ranked flyweight. She's looking to hold on to it. For Calvillo, it's an opportunity to showcase that she's viable at multiple weight classes. She's obviously the 10th ranked strawweight. She's moving up to flyweight, and to see kind of where she fits in there. All right, let's talk technicals. You can look at the statistics in front of you. All right, I'm a big guy on percentage in terms of strikes. I'm a big guy on, where you're at in terms of significant strikes versus total strikes. So, I don't want to state the obvious here, but Calvillo outworked early in the fight, seemed to want to control the center of the octagon, but not push the action. She was waiting for Calvillo to come to her and counter her. Ai's corner wanted more action and combinations. They never came. Right? Obviously, look, 294 strikes were thrown by Cynthia Calvillo, and 150 of them were connected. Almost nearly the same. 11 less strikes were thrown by Jessica Ai, and she connected at 25% rate. So what were you doing with all these strikes, Jessica Ai? Where were they going? What were they meant to do? On top of that, 4 takedowns, 4 of 7. So she's at 50% for her takedowns as well with Cynthia Calvillo. It was just a really, early on I thought that Ai, despite all her criticisms and the cringiness of it all, I thought that she was going to be a fighter who was, technically sound, and that she was going to still kind of connect. But Calvillo was just a better fighter throughout. I mean, it was just her night. She was there. And the part that really impressed me was I could see Jessica Ai outstriking her because she outstruck her early. And that Calvillo was going to get more takedowns. And I was like, okay, it's going to be one of those fights where Calvillo has more takedowns, Ai has a better striking percentage or more landed, and we have to figure out what's more important. Listen, Cynthia Calvillo controlled it all. She controlled both sides, she controlled the levels, she controlled the distance, she controlled the pace. It was just her fight throughout. All right, let's talk about what's next. I'm going to start with Ai only because she's number 1 ranked fighter in the division. It's weird. It's hard to imagine you come in the fight ranked number 1 and your career could be in trouble, but it just wasn't a very impressive performance. And she's gone on long skids before, right? She lost 4 in a row once. I mean, of course, they were up weight class at bantamweight. And, it was 3 studs in Miesha Tate, Juliana Pena, and Sarah McMahon, and also Bethe Correia. Bethe Correia, not throwing her any shade. She's fought for a world championship. So, I don't know. I like JoJo Calderwood. She's available. She doesn't seem to be booked right now. And they've never fought. Also, Calderwood's lost to Calvillo, so there's some, you're kind of keeping it alive. If I like this idea that you get a nice pack of fighters at any division, male or female, and they all fight each other, and you sort of have like a Hagler, Hearns, Leonard, Duran sort of thing, where everybody's fought everybody, and then we can see kind of how it all shakes out. For Calvillo, listen, it depends on how quickly you want her to be at the top of the division. You could put her in there with Caitlin Chikagian next, and then if she wins that, she fights Valentina Shevchenko. If you want to slow her roll a little bit, you put her in there with KGB Lee. That's what I can see for her. But listen, great performance, fantastic job by Cynthia Calvillo. Hats off to you, and we move on. But first, let's take a look at some social media stuff. Adam Martin said Jessica Ai is the number 1 ranked flyweight. You just can't take this division seriously. If she's the number 1 ranked flyweight, you can't take the division seriously. I can see where he would come up with that. Jessica Ai versus Cynthia Calvillo will be the 400th fight in the UFC women's division, a division that Dana White once said would never occur. So, hats off to the ladies. Congratulations, 400. All right, let's move on.
Fight Night Picks is brought to you by Strikeforce Energy. Head on over to the website, strikeforceenergy.com. If you enjoy the flavor of freedom, the company's veteran-owned and everything's made in America. They've got great apparel. You can turn any 16.9-ounce beverage into an energy drink. There's no sugar, no calories, no stirring, or no shaking required. They also have a line of different products as well as Strikeforce coffee. So if I head into my cart, I've got a 4-count sample pack. I've got a 20-ounce coffee mug. And if I head into that checkout, Use the promo code FNP, click to apply, and you're going to save 20% off any order. That's FNP at strikeforceenergy.com.
Marvin Vettori and Karl Roberson. All right, Marvin Vettori and Karl Roberson. Let's go ahead and get up the graphic. All right, so clearly the Fight Night picks folks were in the camp of Marvin Vettori, the Italian Dream, picking him 73% over 27%. Let's go ahead and give this proper introduction. Coming into Saturday, the Italian Dream, Marvin Vettori was 3-2 in his last 5. However, both his losses were by decision. 1 to the 6-2 at the time, Antonio Carlos Jr., and 1 to arguably the best fighter in the world right now, Israel Adesanya. For Roberson, he's 3-2 in his last 5 as well, and losses to heavy hitters in Carlos Ferreira and Glover Teixeira at 205. Let's talk about the stakes. Yes, both these guys are in the top 20, according to RankingMMA.com. So with a win, they both inch closer to that top 15 in the UFC ranking. Obviously, you have to be in the top 15 to be ranked in the UFC. Let's talk about technique. Well, they both came out as southpaws. They both were taking different approaches in terms of being fighting at southpaw. Vettori was looking to throw big, straight left hands, and Roberson was looking to work off that right-hand jab. Roberson actually scored the first takedown, sort of pulling Vettori back and sort of going after his neck. Vettori quickly reversed, got a takedown of his own. Vettori used ground and pound to make Roberson's neck available, and while Roberson was defending the ground and pound, Vettori snatched his neck and ended it. So let's take a look at the fight, the official finish. All right, and there you have it. The finish was Marvin Vettori defeating Karl Roberson. Karl Roberson by submission via rear naked choke, 4:17 in the very first round. If you look at the stats, I mean, it was all Vettori, 60 out of 79 for his strikes. Roberson only getting 16 off. 76% clip for Vettori. 2 takedowns, 2 of 3, 67%. I do disagree with that 0 attempted and 0 takedowns for Roberson. I think it was quickly reversed by Vettori, but I think Roberson's the one that brought the fight to the floor. So you have to put some stock in that as well. All right, let's talk about what's next for these guys. I mean, you can keep it simple. If you look at the rankings, these guys are all are both in the 17-18, 16-20 for rankings MMA. So we keep it simple. Eric Anders for Roberson, and for Vettori, listen, I've seen some graphics. I should bring it up, but I see some graphics where someone did some fight art, a graphic of Vettori versus Adesanya 2. Let's relax. There was a very close fight once upon a time between Marvin Vettori and Israel Adesanya, a split decision win for Adesanya that many thought Vettori won, but Adesanya has grown by leaps and bounds since that fight, and Vettori has not grown as much. So the chances of Marvin Vettori, I mean, it's a nice feather to have in your cap. You may need it someday. You ain't going to need it soon. So that's kind of where I stand on this whole Vettori Adesanya business, which I think the guy was probably just having fun online. But for me, I like Vettori fighting Brad Tavares. Again, they both fought Israel Adesanya. I like if there's someone that you're going after, you have similar opponents. So there's some commonality there. And so I'll give Roberson Anders, and I'll give Vettori Tavares. All right, let's take a look at social media. MMAfighting.com said Vettori says he wants his first $50,000 UFC bonus. I'm going to the back to Dana, and I'm going to choke him out too. All right, Vettori. I like the energy. Vettori was a madman after this fight, by the way. He was going crazy in the back. Let's check out some more social media. This is Niall McGrath talking about the whole thing I just spoke about. He speaks more about me, and I'm not even ranked yet. Marvin Vettori says him and Stylebender have to run it back. I don't know if they have to run it back. I'm not really looking for it, but I get if you're Vettori, you keep his name out there. I get that. I understand why you would do that. So props to him. Hey, listen, we're not here to throw shade, and we're not here to be haters. If Vettori can land that fight, more power to the kid. I just don't think he can. So that's kind of where I'm looking at it. What's next? And I'm going to be straight up with you. This Charles Rosa, Kevin Aguilar fight, no one is sitting around wondering what's next for these two guys. So neither am I, so I'm not going to get into it. But I will get into the fight. I'll begin by speaking on Fight Night picks. Listen, they had a close fight. They had Charles Rosa at a 58% over Kevin Aguilar, 42%. While we're here, let's discuss some nicknames. Boston Strong and Angel of Death. It's pretty hardcore. You can't argue with Boston Strong just because of its origins. I can't sit there and throw shade at Boston Strong. But Angel of Death is, all due respect to Kevin Aguilar, I don't know that he looks like an Angel of Death, and that's a compliment. He looks like a nice guy. All right, let's move on to sort of talking about how this went down. Listen, the fight was interesting for me because Charles Rosa, typically when you see guys switching stances, they fight similarly in both stances, right? If they fight, as a traditional boxer, as an orthodox, they fight the same as a southpaw. Not this fight. Charles Rosa looked like a Boston boxer from orthodox, and he looked like Wonder Boy Thompson from southpaw. I thought he was more effective as a southpaw. I thought he was throwing bigger strikes. The left hand was cracking Aguilera, some big left kicks. It did seem to me the recipe here would have been, right, in my opinion, the recipe here would have been that when Charles Rosa went southpaw, you go after that lead leg and you take him down. Because he really had turned. He was full Wonder Boy. So that seemed obvious to me, but either Aguilar didn't have the wherewithal or the insight to see that. And maybe I'm wrong, but that's what it seemed like it looked like to me. Again, we will not discuss what's next for these boys, but we will discuss the fight and how it went in terms of a decision. The fight went the way of Charles Rosa by a split decision. He defeated Kevin Aguilar by split decision, 29-28, 28-29, 29-28. Again, you can look at the numbers here. Close fight. No one was being overly impressive in terms of one stat I would like to see, and if it's out there and I didn't find it, I apologize. I'd like to see Rosa's effectiveness as a southpaw as opposed to as an orthodox fighter. I think that you would see the percentages are much lower as an orthodox fighter, but he was at 40%. There were 173 strikes, which is a ton. Both guys went for takedowns, 2 for Aguilar, only 1 for Rosa. Neither of them hit him. So, again, it wasn't an overly exciting fight. I'm not necessarily all that excited for what's next for these boys. But, they did their thing. They got in there and they put one on. But, again, I need to see more for me to get excited about what's next. Let's take a look at some of the social media for these guys. What if these guys throw more than one punch at a time when hitting the pads? At Gabe O_82. Throwing heat, Gabe. Apparently, this is Charles Rosa's first UFC win that didn't happen in the city of Boston. Thank you, Jose Youngs, for that interesting stat or fact. Close and competitive fight. I lean 29-28 Rosa, with Boston Strong edging out the third. Let's see. Dan Tom was completely correct on that one, as he normally is. All right, we continue. Main card. A fight with a little bit more intrigue. A fight with a little bit more on the line. I'm not going to give you what's next for these guys either. I just don't feel like their careers are somewhere where the MMA world is begging to know what's happening next for these guys. If I'm wrong, hit me up in the comments. I'm completely fine with you guys tossing shade on me in the comments about I'm missing the boat on these two. But let's talk about Andre Fili, Charles Air Jourdain. Let's talk about nicknames for a second here with these guys. Fight Night Picks is big upping Andre Touchy Fili over Charles Air Jourdain, 68% to 32%. Let's talk about what I saw. I saw a fairly competitive fight early. Fili had the more effective and higher volume of punches. Jourdain worked effectively off his back foot early. He even dropped Fili at one point, but Fili was just too much. It was unclear as to whether or not Paul Felder talked to Fili about this in the post-fight, as to whether or not his hand or wrist or arm was injured based on a Jourdain kick, because Fili abandoned that thing for like a couple of rounds, it seemed like. He did acknowledge that there was an issue with it. He said something along the lines of, when he's kicking like the way he is, you just can't let it fire like you want to. I don't know, maybe he thought Jourdain was going to kick over top of it. It was unclear to me what he meant by that, but it seemed like he was carrying it like he had hurt it. I saw him a couple times adjusting his glove in his hand like this. So take that for what it's worth. Maybe it'll come out in the next couple of days, what's going on with that. But listen, with the hand that he had and with the takedowns, he was just a much more effective fighter. Jourdain looked good early, but in the end, Fili was just too much. There's these fights. I was talking with Keith Schillen on the other recap show I used to do 100 years ago, which is Some guys are just professional fighters, and they've been in there enough to figure out a path to victory. I think that's the case with Andre Fili here. I think he just figured out. I thought that maybe I could bully this kid a little bit more than I actually can. This kid's solid. He's got, he's got a little bit of crack in him, and so from that perspective, I gotta win this like a professional. And he did. All right, let's see how it all played out. Andre Fili defeated Charles Jourdain by split decision, 29-28, 28-29, 29-28. I can get where they would have gotten to a split decision if you look at the numbers. Super low percentage here for Andre Fili, 52 of 183. I mean, that's super busy, not landing a whole bunch. For Jourdain, there's a little bit more of an efficient fight there. 65 of 142 at 46%. Listen, guys, these are stats that I'm fascinated with. When you're at cage side, you don't have access to these stats. So, but you have access to seeing that Jourdain is hitting more of what he's throwing than Fili is. You might not be able to quantify that in terms of statistics, but I think that you can tell, and I think that it shows itself. But listen, 5 of 6 takedowns at 83%. I think Fili used his wrestling. He got a takedown in every round, really turned it on at the end. So I think that's what led to his victory. And Jourdain is there, but he's just not where Fili is yet. So let's take a look at what Twitter had to say. Grabaka_Hitman 29-28. Jourdain, but can easily go Fili's way. Round 2 is my swing round. My only question is how anyone is scoring round 1 to Fili. I can understand that. I hear the judge that scored it for Jourdain is from Florida. At Best Fight Picks, Dan, throwing a little shade there. MMA, Andre Fili dances like a velociraptor on ecstasy. Figure that one out. It certainly is an interesting visual by Mac Malley, who's a great follow, by the way. You follow Mac Malley by his jerky. You know, he's a good guy. He's a good Twitter guy. But this one's got me a little twisted. I can't quite get my head around this one. And we move on to Jordan Espinosa and Mark De La Rosa. Okay, Fight Night Picks had this one for De La Rosa. The Bumblebee. Mark the Bumblebee De La Rosa over Jordan Espinosa. Folks, that is not how it played out. Let's talk some technique here. Espinosa and De La Rosa are the same height, but Espinosa had a 5-inch reach advantage, which depending on who you talk to, that means something or that means nothing. Some people don't subscribe to the fact that reach matters. Some people do. In this one, I thought it made a difference. The advantage really showed his ability to work his jab, despite his low hands. A lot of guys at the highest level, I would challenge someone to tell me who can keep their hands low and still be successful. Maybe Tyron Woodley. He does glue that one hand and sort of makes the other one a little bit lower. I would challenge someone to tell me who else keeps their hands low effectively at the highest levels. I don't think it's a effective technique at the highest levels, but where Jordan Espinosa and Mark De La Rosa are, it works. So again, despite his low hands, he found De La Rosa early and often, using his foot and head movement to avoid counters. De La Rosa had some success getting Espinosa up against the cage, but even then, Espinosa was like using elbow strikes. He was using knees. I mean, he was making Mark De La Rosa pay for getting him up against the cage. Espinosa was using, like I said, elbow strikes. Of particular note, if you looked at the black line, okay, let's talk about this for a second because it's a little bit confusing for me to say. So if you're looking at the octagon, there's the outer cage, right, where the fence is. Then inside, there's almost like an outline of an octagon in black tape or black paint, however they put it on there. There's 2 of them. There's a smaller one and a larger one. What I noticed about this fight is it seemed like every time De La Rosa's foot got past that black line, it was an indication that he had reached a point where he was willing to come forward, close the distance, and get to the cage. He was successful in that a couple times. Again, I did say Espinosa made him pay the price. It seemed like when he got near there, it was almost an indicator for Espinosa to strike. And every time De La Rosa sort of crossed that threshold, Espinosa was there to beat him back into the middle of the octagon. You know, that's what I saw. It just showed me that Espinosa was having none of De La Rosa getting that far across the cage. Listen, these guys are young, both of them, particularly De La Rosa. He'll be back. Tonight he just had no answers for Jordan Espinosa. I mean, the kid's striking, and we're going to get to the stats here in a second, but like 100 strikes in the first round? That's insane. To 9 for De La Rosa. I will talk about what's next for these guys. I do want to take a look at how the fight finished first, only because I'm interested. right? I'm going to talk to you guys moving forward, unless the comments dictate I do something different, about the fights that I'm interested to see. I'm interested to see Jourdain Espinosa again, much more than I'm interested in seeing Charles Rosa or Kevin Aguilar or Fili or Charles Jourdain. I want to see what's next for Jourdain Espinosa. What am I looking at here? Any guy that can put 100 strikes up in a round is certainly worth my attention. So we're going to talk about it. What's next for him here in a second. All right, let's get to the stats. All right, guys, here's the stats. And listen, if this is one of those fights that if you your family member is asking, if you're Mark De La Rosa and your family member is like, hey, did you fight this weekend? You just tell them either no or skip it or catch the next one, because, I mean, there is a huge, huge disparity. Now, here's the narrative that you're going to hear in these kind of fights. People are going to tell you how great Mark De La Rosa's chin is. Fantastic. All right, more power to you. Maybe we get ourselves in a situation where we don't have to use our chin so much. Maybe we work the head, maybe we work the feet, and keep ourselves out of harm's way. Now, whenever you find a situation like this, you have to decide, am I going to throw shade on Mark De La Rosa or give praise to Jourdain Espinosa? I'm going to go ahead and give praise to Jourdain Espinosa, with the caveat to that being that, listen, De La Rosa, we got to work out some kinks here, right? I say this with all due respect to anyone who has ever fought MMA. 100 strikes in the first, anybody landing 100 strikes on you in the first round is not acceptable. It's just not. It isn't. So, you got to get that tightened up. So 188 of 254 for 74%. 126 of those were significant strikes. Of the 254 thrown, 185 were significant. Of those 185, 126 were landed for 68%. So if you look at the percentages, this kid was sharp all night. 74% from total, 68 from significant, 67 on takedowns, 2 of 3. And if I'm not mistaken, and correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, I'm sure you will, but De La Rosa came in here the more accomplished, or on paper, the better wrestler. It was just Espinosa night. This is the one, when people ask you if you are a fighter, if you're Jourdain Espinosa, you tell them, yeah, watch me when I fought Mark De La Rosa. What's next? Espinosa wants Nam. Tyson Nam, that works for me. He earned his pick of next opponent tonight, I believe. Jourdain Espinosa did. He was that impressive. Next for De La Rosa again. All due respect, is the gym. You can't get outclassed like that on your feet. I'm not even thinking about this guy's next opponent. I'm not even concerned with who his next opponent is. I'm concerned with his next boxing class and when that's going to happen, right? Or listen, either that or Jourdain Espinosa is an all-timer, right? Either I'm misreading Jourdain Espinosa in terms of a talent and in terms of what his future lays, or De La Rosa has some stand-up work to do. And we'll leave it at that. Let's see what social media has to say. Espinosa said, like I said, he'd be interested in meeting Tyson Nam on July 25th, Fight Island. I'm with that. Let's do it. Say my name at Shannon, though, or I'm Shannon, though. You have to respect De La Rosa's heart. That man did not give up. He took everything Espinosa threw at him and kept coming forward. Listen, with all due respect to that tweet, and she's a great follower. She's a great tweeter. I get it. I agree that it takes a lot to go in there and take that kind of ass whipping for that long and continue to move forward and continue to be a relevant part of the fight. I don't disagree with that. I'm not trying to say that I disagree with what she's saying here. I am just saying that, you have to take what you need, how good his heart is and how good his chin is. Don't change things in the ring. They make you fall in love with the fact that you can eat shots, and maybe you're more comfortable eating them than you should. And we move on to the prelims. Folks, let's talk about this young lady, Mariya Agapova. She fought Hannah Cifers going in. 69% of Fight Night Picks folks thought she was going to win, compared to 31% thought Hannah Cifers was going to win. 69% of you are correct in a very big way. Let's talk some technique here. When last we saw Agapova, she was losing to Tracy Cortez, which essentially punched Cortez's ticket to the UFC. So you would think that if Agapova looked good there, I happen to think, listen, Tracy Cortez is a local fighter here to Phoenix. I feel like she was heading to the UFC. They put her on a Contender Series, but there was a lot of momentum for her to go to UFC before she was on the Contender Series. She's at a Fight Ready, obviously Henry Cejudo's gym. So there are connections that Tracy Cortez had with the UFC well before she was on the Contender Series. Those connections probably got her on a Contender Series. That aside, on this night, not that night, but on this night, it was all Agapova. She came in looking to do damage and did it quickly. Cifers tried to close the distance and do some punching on the break. It was all ill-fated. Agapova found the range, sat Cifers down with a head kick, had her wobbled a little bit later in the round, and found a rear naked choke. Okay. let's look at the stats, although, I mean, that's pretty much the story. The stats are going to tell you a little bit, but that's pretty much sums it up. So like I said, the way it went down, Mariya Agapova defeated Hannah Cifers by submission via rear naked choke. First round, 242 of it. And again, here we go. 36 of 59, 29 significant strikes, no takedowns for either lady, unless you count that head kick that took her down. That took Cifers down for sure. Again, much in the way that we talked about Jourdain Espinosa, I am interested in what's next for Agapova. She drew comparisons to Jourdain Jacek. I saw it when I was watching the fight. People on Twitter commented about it. I definitely see it. She looks like she means business. She looks like she's coming after it. Being a prisoner of the moment, okay, you want to fast track her. And I get that. But listen, you can't put her on any faster of a track than Cortez because Cortez beat her. So I think that you take a look at what's next for Cortez, and then you go from there. But, you know, we might have something real legit in this girl. I don't think that Hannah Cifers was the person that was going to push her in the way that she needed to be pushed. Maybe her original opponent, which was Melissa Gatto, would have pushed her more. I don't know. I just know on tonight, she would. And listen, props to Hannah Cifers. Hannah Cifers tried to do some work in the clinch. It just wasn't there. It just wasn't going to happen. There's something about this Agapova, and she looks to be going places. So I want to see what's happening next. I mean, if I got excited about everybody look good on the prelims, then there'd be a lot of excitement coming out of me. So let's keep it measured, but at the same time, let's give props for what we saw. She looked good. Let's check out social media. Friend of the show, at Kairos MMA, Mariya Agapova is a gangster, all gas, no brakes. I'm about to fight someone. I love that kid. He's a great follow. Make sure you follow him. He's a well thought out guy on a lot of different subjects. So make sure you follow Kairos if you're not following already. Erica at EdBurn29. Does Agapova look and remind anyone else of Joanna? We talked about that already. So yeah, great tweet there as well. And we move on to Merab, Dvalishvili, and Gustavo Lopez. I saw most of the fight night ones. Let's see what folks thought about this one. 86% Dvalishvili, 14% Gustavo Lopez. This fight started out kind of crazy. Lopez was in there smiling. He kind of looked like he was just happy to be there. And, Merab wiped the smile off his face pretty quickly. All right, let's first give hats off to Gustavo Lopez. Let's give him his props. You know, on short notice, he takes on an animal in Merab Dvalishvili. And for most of, if not all the fight, I didn't see the kid break. I really didn't. Well into the second, I know for sure. Deep into the second, I was looking to see if he was broken. My guess would be takedowns 10 through 13. We'll get to that in a second. Were the ones that broke him. But I thought he represented himself well on short notice. All right, let's talk about Merab. Because there's a lot to unpack here. And there's a lot to like here. I thought his striking looked good in terms of results. I think him being such a prolific takedown machine opens up the striking a little bit. I will forever believe that if you are, again, as prolific as Merab is, the notion that you're putting your head down is in a way a feint of a takedown, or having your hands low. Anytime you feint a takedown, it's one of those things where like that thing where it's like you feel like all day, did I turn the iron off? Did I turn the oven off? You always have in the back of your mind the fact that Merab could take you down. It never goes away. So with that being said, so in the sense that your hands have to be just a slight bit lower, and then maybe that makes Merab a little bit more of an effective striker than he would be otherwise. Now, with that being said, you can't take that away from him, right? That's the thing that he earned. So let's talk about some of the things I liked in the striking. The high kick to 1-2 combo was nice. He likes the high kick and followed up with strikes. The neck crank was solid, but he wasn't really going anywhere with that. He was just like wearing Gustavo Lopez out. I did like one time he was transitioning. He was on the ground. He was making his way up. Like he was in top position on Lopez. On his way up, Lopez was on his back. Hit him with a hammer fist just because, he's passing by. Figured he'd crack him with one. I do like that. He has an equalizer. in his takedowns. So he walks in to a fight knowing that he has something that evens the field no matter who he's fighting. It's blasphemy to mention Khabib this early in the game. But I will say this. When you are that prolific a wrestler, it erases a lot of mistakes in the stand-up. And I feel that way about Khabib, and I feel that way about Merab. Merab, for me, did look a little bit like sort of a poor man's Frankie Edgar. Built like him, haircut like him. They both fight in the Northeast. And he kind of had that thing that Frankie tends to do, where he's kind of like not giving you a consistent pace, switching it up. Not quite Dominic Cruz, but he's moving. He'll go one way and then go the other, and just kind of. I saw a little bit of that out of Merab. Let's look at it officially. All right, so for Merab again, we're up over 50%, 110 out of 187, 57% for your significant strikes, 13 takedowns of 18. The kid tried 18. He got 13. 72%. You're not going to do too much better than that. So, again, I didn't do the official reading of the result here. Merab Dvalishvili defeated Gustavo Lopez by unanimous decision, 30-26, 30-26, 30-25. So, I mean, he was all over the guy. We'll get to social media because there's a lot about Merab in terms of what those 13 takedowns meant in terms of his history. And we'll get to that in a second. Let's talk about what's next. As far as what's next for me, Merab was supposed to fight Ray Borg tonight. I say we give him Borg. I say Borg, he's got a lot going on, this kid Borg. And I think that in any time that we can give him a little bit extra shine, let's do it. Merab is obviously a guy who's on the rise. A win over Merab would be great for Ray Borg, so let's give him the opportunity. Let's give Merab the opportunity. That's really who Merab should have been fighting, a guy at that level, a guy that's fought for a championship before. So let's take a look at social media now. So first things first, I wanted you guys to take a look at this. This is from Numbers MMA, their Instagram. In his last fight, 3 fights alone, Merab Dvalishvili has more takedowns than anyone else in UFC bantamweight history. So let's take a look at what that means. Merab has landed twice as many takedowns as any other fighter in UFC bantamweight history after setting a new division single fight record with 13, breaking his previous record of 12. Dvalishvili has 52 takedowns landed through 6 UFC fights. Second place is Uriah Faber and Ricky Simone, tied with 26 each. That Simone thing was kind of surprising to me. This kid has twice as many takedowns as the second place guys in bantamweight history. I mean, let that sink in for a second. And it's through 6 fights. It isn't like this guy's had a long career. Twice as many as the next 2 guys. Insane. Look at this corner. Look at this crew, says Sean Morgan. These maniacs. So we got Ally Quinta. We got Aljamain Sterling. I'm not sure the other guy. But, listen, they have fun at Serra-Longo. They enjoy it, and they're really high-level guys. Aljamain Sterling should be fighting for belts. Ally Quinta has fought has fought Khabib, went 5 rounds with him. So these are not guys who don't know the way around an octagon, but they still enjoy themselves. Matthew Wells, friend of the podcast. I'm starting to think the machine isn't a nickname. 13 takedowns, that's not human. Great tweet by Matthew. Go ahead and follow him at Mr. M. Wells Art. And lastly, Chas Skelly. Death, taxes, and Dvalishvili takedowns. Here's how you know Merab is making it in this world. People are starting to pronounce his name correctly. It happened with Joanna. It happened with Khabib. The more comfortable people are pronouncing your name, the better you know you're doing. All right, let's hit these last 3. Let's hit these last 3 sort of in a rush. They're right here. Julia Avila, Tyson Nam, Christian Aguilera. They started this night. Let me tell you what they did, and then we'll get into the particulars. This is what they did. Aaron Bronstetter quote tweeting his own initial tweet of a minute and 31 seconds of cage time after 2 fights, up to a minute and 53 seconds of cage time after 3 fights. So let's give this entire early prelim card a fitting introduction. We'll introduce it all pretty much together. Let's call it minute and 53 seconds of hell to start this card. Listen, I'll keep this quick because that's what they did. I'll run right through it very quickly. Julia Avila defeated Gina Mazany by TKO. via strikes. The quick talk here is Mazany came out like she was going to tell Avila what was what. Hit her a couple times. Avila ate him. Completely flipped the script around. Basically just said, okay, you hit me, now I'm going to hit you. Pushed her back the other way. Her strikes were much, much more prolific. And next thing you know, Mazany is getting the fight called for her. And it's a wrap. Avila looks sharp. Let's talk about Tyson Nam. Listen, people came into this fight very high on Zarrukh Adashev on his feet, and he was quickly off of his feet. He left himself exposed when throwing leg kicks, and Nam countered with a right hand bomb and closed the show. 32 seconds in the very first round, and Christian Aguilera, Anthony Ivy. Listen, I can't wrap my head around Anthony Ivy. It seemed to me, and again, guys, in the comments, feel free to correct me. It seemed to me like he was doing some sort of customado, peekaboo, like he was covering up on the feet. If that's part of the game plan, I get it. Frazier did that, but that's not what I don't know. It just seemed like it didn't seem right. It didn't seem like, Anyway, Aguilera found an opening, and just like Adashev, Ivy got a little lazy in the kicking game. It was a wrap for Anthony Ivy. We can look at the stats. Actually, we're probably not going to look at the stats. There's not much to see. But I would be interested to see who Fight Night Picks wanted for each of these fights. Let's see how well they did. So Aguilera, 77%. They were in the corner of Anthony Ivy. Wow, 77 to 23%. They had love for Tyson Nam, 89% to 11% over the Lion. And Julia Avila, 72% to 28%. Let's take a look at what social media situation was like for these fights. Brett Okamoto says of Christian Aguilera now has 6 sub-minute KOs in his career with that 59-second finish. That power was evident. Anthony Ivy didn't want any of that once he felt it. Great tweet by Brett Okamoto. Follow him. The great Marcel Dorff. You cannot say his name without saying the great first. The great Marcel Dorff. That was beautiful no matter what they say. Great debut for Christian Aguilera. Follow Marcel at Big Marcel 24. Drake Riggs, and there's the Tyson Nam we were waiting for. Wow, just beautiful. UFC Vegas 2, hashtag at Drake Riggs _. Wow, Tyson Nam absolutely flattened Zarrukh Adashev. He needed that UFC win so badly after starting 0-2. Mike Bond, at Mike Bond MMA, follow Mike. Moving on to the Avila victory and the social media attached to it. Julia Avila, what? What a quick TKO of Gina Mazany, another in less than a minute at the B. Martin. All right, guys, so what's this all mean? Right, where are we at? What's next? I want to talk about some stuff that I got moving forward, and then we'll get out of here. Let's talk about some of the social media just for the night, and then I'll give you my sort of last pieces on this thing, and then we'll go from there. Misty B at, I'm not even going to try with this. Life is good. Life is good. At Life is Good. I love the butter-faced cards that everyone writes off. Hashtag UFC Vegas 2. That's the tweet itself is worthy of a follow, so go ahead and give Misty B a follow. Instagram, let's talk about this octagon. Ara Hawani sent to his Instagram lots to talk about the smaller cage at the Apex lately. Here's a good visual of the difference between the one they have been using for these Vegas shows and the usual big arena cage, courtesy of at Jake Leibowitz 74. If you're wondering why they are using the smaller cage at the Apex now, I'm told it's because the lighting grid was designed for it, not the bigger one. The plan wasn't to have UFC events there, rather Contender Series at all. If they put in the bigger cage, it won't be lit well. Which do you like better? Dana White, and I wish I had a tweet that represented this. He said, listen, it's an illusion. It doesn't matter. I think that's probably because if Dana concedes that this cage is a more action-packed cage, then people are going to say, well, why don't we just use that all the time? And I think Dana wants to give the appearance, this is just me speculating, of a much bigger cage for aesthetics in an arena show. That'd be my thought. But I don't know. So Duke Rufus says the same size cage as WC and the cards that were at the Palms. Gary Dolan, at Dolan MMA, 3 fights, 3 finishes. I love this game. Pulling something from, I love this game. What is that? Is that NBA? Back in the day? I think it's NBA. Tommy Toll, I don't have enough wolf tattoos. That one flew right over my head. Craig Allen is our social media guy on this recap. And he sent this to me. I got nothing. If you know what that means, hit me in the comments. Considering that card looked terrible on paper, that was a great night of fights at JMMA. I'm going to go ahead and say I hope this is sarcasm. But maybe this was tweeted early in the in the night. I don't know how serious I should take at clapping cheeks, but good job at UFC for putting on the worst card I've ever seen. That was easily the worst main event since I started watching in the early 2000s. So he accomplishes a lot here. Unless he's not a casual, right? Started watching in the early 2000s, and he throws some shade at the main event. Listen, I'm not saying the main event was one of the greatest main events of all time, but to say this is one of the worst cards he's ever seen, he's may not be a casual, but he's certainly talking like one. So I disagree with clapping cheeks. That's a Craig Allen special right there. If you can give some context to this, or Craig can, we'll look into that later. All right, let's talk about who got paid tonight. And there you have it. Performance bonuses, cash money, no $50,000 to each of them. There was no fight of the night. So Marvin Vettori got paid, Christian Aguilera got paid, Tyson got paid, and Mariya Agapova got paid. All certainly deserving. There are other people that I'm sure that were out there caping. I'm glad that Marvin Vettori got his bonus, so he doesn't have to choke out Dana. Or maybe he did choke out Dana, so I got it. Let's talk a little bit about, and we'll sort of put a period on this card. A few things that I noticed, and as the weeks come, maybe I'll get a graphic for this. Some things that stuck out to me. Let's talk about who won the night, right? The bonuses obviously were given out. There's really a couple of people that you could say competed for who won the night. You got Merab, you got Calvillo, you got Nam, you got Vettori, and I will throw Agapova in there as well, right? Those are your competitors for, like, if we had finalists of who won the night. I'm going to narrow it down to two and go, Vettori might have set himself up nice too. I'm going to go with Calvillo and Merab as my two that won the night. I think Merab won the night socially and more like his name got out there. He got himself in the history books. So he's starting to build his resume. Calvillo, I think, won the night in terms of her career moving forward and her proximity to a world championship. I think she is one or two fights away from a championship. I think if they put her in there with Caitlin Chikagian, she'll be fighting for that belt before you know it. So, and depending on how she looks like against Chikagian, I would give the night to Cynthia, Calvillo, and Merab Dvalishvili. In terms of who I would want to least be today, who's the person when I woke up, I'm like, last night was rough. Jessica I. As usual, a fight she could have had. She continues to get outclassed with the high-level opponents, and it's largely due to a lack of activity. She does fancy herself, I believe, a counter striker. Again, if you guys see something different in her, let me know in the comments. That's what I see. And it's just not there some nights. She just gets outworked. And so I wouldn't want to be her waking up tomorrow knowing I could have probably had this fight and didn't do enough. And listen, Mark De La Rosa, I mean, that's a huge disparity in strikes. And there's some guys that got knocked, and gals that got knocked absolutely dead tonight. I mean, who wants to be Adashev tomorrow? Much respect to the guy in terms of what happened today. But, they kind of got caught, right? Jessica I got outworked. Mark De La Rosa got outworked for the entirety of 5 and 3 rounds, respectively. So I think that's going to stick with them a little bit longer than what happened to Adashev or Ivy or Mazany. In terms of my loss, but should still feel good, I like Jourdain. I think he represented himself well. Fili gave him a roadmap for improvement. He needs to sharpen up that wrestling, needs to increase his output, make himself less hittable. Now, is that everybody? Yeah. But I think that I was impressed with the kid. I mean, he took a vet to a split decision here, and I like what I saw. I think that he has a path towards being a top 15 fighter. I can't envision him being in the top 10, but I think he can sneak in the top 15. The stuff in the margins, Paul Felder, he continues to impress. I think sometimes fighters put a little bit more stuff. I don't know what they get paid to be commentators. I would imagine it's not overly lucrative, but let's say it's 6 figures. Then, okay, it's worth it for a guy like Felder to hang him up and go be a commentator. He's getting good, and Fitzgerald's getting good too. They got a lot of reps together. I like them. I always say that Bisping and Fitzgerald are like, the brother-in-laws. They don't want to like each other, but they have to like each other. I don't see that with Felder and Fitzgerald. It's much more of a I don't know if it's like an Irish Catholic kind of thing, but they seem connected in that way. They seem like they have a shared experience in some way. They're both from the Northeast potentially. That's where how it comes across. And listen, they're doing good work, so props to them. Hats off to them. All right, guys, be sure and comment under the video. Let us know what you'd like to see next from the show here on YouTube, but also iTunes and Spotify. Craig can be followed at Craig Allen FNP. The site can be followed at Fight Night Picks. And I can be followed at SM Cornerman. The fight has been stopped. We'll see you next week. Peace.